to another episode of Mental Health for Creative Minds, where we explore the intersection of mental health and creativity. I'm your host, Jessica McGann, TV producer and advocate for mental health support in the film and television industry. And that is exactly why today I am so excited to introduce you to Alice Ride, founder of Set Protect, a program that provides comprehensive mental health support for creative professionals and production companies. In this episode, Alice shares her personal experiences with mental health struggles and the shocking realities that she faced in the film industry, both union and non-union, during the COVID-19 pandemic. That was a fun time, wasn't it? The challenges she faced during this time were multifaceted. From implementing safety protocols with no prior blueprint to refer to, and also simultaneously observing the mental health deterioration among her fellow crew members, exacerbated by the crisis. Alice's journey led her to establish Set Protect. And in our conversation, we dive into the psychological toll the pandemic continues to wield on our mental well-being. So please join us as we explore how the combination of community support and professional mental health resources can create a healthier, more sustainable environment for creative professionals. Whether you're navigating the lingering effects of the pandemic or seeking strategies to enhance mental health support in your workplace, this episode offers valuable perspectives and solutions that resonate with anyone in the creative field. In this episode, we are going to cover the real impact of the pandemic on mental health, the importance of mental health resources on set, and how providing that support can prevent burnout and enhance the overall well-being of our crew members. We're going to cover practical solutions and resources and the role and importance of having a safe community. This episode offers both a deep understanding of the mental health challenges specific to creative fields and provides actionable steps that can lead to meaningful changes, making this episode essential listening for anyone looking to enhance their own well-being on set or advocate for better mental health practices within the industry as a whole. This is a really juicy episode, so without further ado, let's dive in. Alice, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. For all of our listeners who don't know how we met, I just want to give them a little backstory that Alice and I first connected in 2023. Later, like just a few months back, it's May 2024 now. We connected at the end of 2023 because of our shared mutual passion of wanting to create positive mental health change within our film and TV and theater communities. And we just kind of connected and we had a call and we just really share a lot of the same beliefs. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, Alice, let's go right back to the beginning. And can you take us back to the days before Set Protect? Like, what was your life like in these commercial and non-union film scenes? And what really sparked that initial idea that you wanted to make a difference in this industry?
Yeah. Okay. So if we go right back to production days, I mean, I guess I started in film in 2016. So, 8 years ago now, I've been in the film industry here in BC. And like everybody else, I started out at the bottom as a locations PA. I think I even did some BG work that I don't admit to sometimes, but nothing wrong with BG work. But
Not at all.
No, not at all. But as somebody that was wanting to get into more of the crew aspect of things, I just kind of took all of the work that I could to get on set because I wanted to work in film, and it's a who you know kind of a business. So started doing that, and then worked my way up, and then started in production and was doing that when the pandemic hit. I was working as a production coordinator. And then, like all other industries, we went into lockdown for 3 months. And then when we came back to work, we all of a sudden needed a whole new service that didn't exist before, which was COVID testing and people on set and PPE and all of these things that as a production worker, we had to figure out how to do all of a sudden. Not to mention we're also going through our own trauma of like going through a pandemic, and also trying to figure out how to do our jobs now as well. So So anyway, so I did that for a little bit, and dealing with these companies as well that kind of popped up to offer COVID services.
You were seeing as a PC, you were seeing these services pop up and you were
Yeah,
coordinating them with the shows that you were PCing on. Is that correct?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, and they were difficult to work with because they weren't film people. They didn't know what our industry was like or how we operate, which, in our industry, we need things done and we need them right now. We needed them
Yes.
yesterday. And and a lot of those companies just didn't have the same urgency that we needed, and so it was really difficult working with them. But I ended up going onto a Netflix show and working as their health and safety coordinator, and saw how they were doing things over in the union side, and
Mm.
thought, hey, we're not doing this well at all over in the non-union world. So once I'd finished that Netflix show, I created Separate Act so that I could take that back to the non-union world so that we could benefit from the same things that they were doing in the union side of things. So a COVID business that was run by industry people, to speak the same language that we were speaking at that time, and still speak now.
Mm.
So and created compliance as well, which is something that a lot of these companies weren't offering, and a lot of people didn't understand.
What do you mean by
Um,
compliance?
so here in BC, we have WorkSafe BC, and they created a bunch of different protocols that you needed a safety plan. You needed to outline all of the things that you were doing, and a lot of people didn't know how to, safely implement these protocols, and new legislation that was changing by the minute as well, and updating as in real time as the
Mm.
pandemic was evolving. And so that was something that we offered as well, which was full compliance as well as full service testing and PCR testing, rapid testing, people on set. And yeah, we ran a full operation for 2 years doing that, which I didn't stop working for about 2 years, which is, I wouldn't recommend that to anyone really. But, that's something we'll get into after, which
Yeah.
was, about working so much in our industry. But it was really through that work that we saw the mental health of everybody decline. And, myself, I was included in that as well, from not working for 2 years. Sorry, not working, but working nonstop for 2 years. My mental health declined, and I went through a period of burnout, and all of our employees or our contract workers, their mental health was also declining. And also everybody on set, everyone that we were testing that was coming through, people were having panic attacks on the phone from hearing that they were COVID positive, because this was in 2021 before we
Oh,
had vaccinations, especially over Christmas time when people were working in productions right up until Christmas Day, and then finding out they were COVID positive, going onto a job and not being able to spend time with their family, and being pulled off a job and having to go into isolation for 2 weeks, and then missing out on that project and that, their finances. So, it was a really challenging time in so many ways for all of us.
I worked straight through that pandemic as well. I was a editor
Mm-hmm.
coordinator on a really big show, and I remember the rules changing so consistently. I remember working at my desk and I had to wear 2 masks and a face shield, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to, like, look at multiple screens, and the rules were constantly changing, the regulations. You were so worried about
Mm-hmm.
getting sick. People were getting sick. I had friends that were consistently testing positive for COVID, and that deterred their mental health. It was hard. It was really hard.
Honestly, it was so hard. And I think it's something that people aren't talking about now as well, because nobody liked the pandemic, not even
So
us
sick of
that we were.
talking about it too, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And, it's one of those things now that people are still resistant to talking about, because
Mm.
then I think you would have to admit the trauma that came along with that, and then you'd have to do something about that. But admittedly, we all have lived through our own trauma associated with it, and we're probably still carrying and dealing and processing a lot of it, subconsciously. So it really was such an interesting time, and I think one of the pivotal times in our industry as well, where we really saw firsthand people's mental health just decline,
And
and
here in 2024, I don't think we're fully
mhm.
recovered from it. I think one thing we've
And
talked about,
yeah.
even like I've said, and this seems so trivial, but wrap parties. At least here in Toronto and the
Mm-hmm.
productions I've worked on since the pandemic has concluded. I'm doing bunny ears for anyone who's just listening.
Yeah.
They haven't come back. And to me, in my mental health training, I know that most people see it as a party, but it's actually so important to the mental health of crews who constantly, as freelancers, we're jumping from sets to sets. And these are long days, these are hard days, these are long
Mm-hmm.
hours, that having a reward, having something to look forward to, having an opportunity to connect with your fellow colleagues in a positive, freeing, celebratory type of space
Mm-hmm.
really allows us to continue on with this work. But if you don't have those moments of celebration, if you don't have those moments to reap the rewards of your work, and you're just constantly going into these hard places, it really does deteriorate the mental health of the people in this industry. And I would love to see companies reconsider bringing wrap parties back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just having that recognition for all of that hard work that you've done at the end, the camaraderie of it all, and the completion of a project, and actually being able to celebrate that properly is everything, with the community that you did it with.
Absolutely. Alice,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the effects of this pandemic that you've really observed in yourself or your fellow coworkers and crew members in this industry?
I mean, I think there's a lot of obvious ones that we talk about regularly, such as burnout and, anxiety, depression, a lot of these themes that generally come up in our industry anyway.
Addiction?
Um, Addiction, a huge one, suicide, you know, all of these themes that have existed before the pandemic, maybe were exacerbated by the pandemic and will continue on past the pandemic as well. Um, but I will say that one thing in particular that was a huge part of why we started moving towards mental health support in Set Protect is the bullying and harassment that became very apparent against all of our workers at the time. And in the height of the pandemic, we had a team of, I would say, about 30 people at the height. And that included a whole team of nurses that were administering these tests, a whole team of COVID monitors that were going to set. And slowly over time, it started as bullying and harassment that was happening to our COVID monitors around set because they were the face of the pandemic. They represented what
Absolutely.
everybody hated, that had changed everybody's lives. But these
The mask
people,
police that were going to tell you to put it back on your face when you just needed a breath of fresh air. And it's so hard to understand. But
yeah,
yeah, they had a hard job. You had a hard job.
exactly. But ironically, those were the people that were there that cared so much about the health and safety of everyone and were there to monitor the health and safety of everyone. And so, unfortunately, though, they also took the brunt of bullying and harassment that came very apparent during this time. So, yeah, that was really difficult for sure to see that. And it even started to escalate so much that we had a testing site that we opened in East Vancouver because we were testing so many film crews by the second year that we opened our own site. And so we had a team of nurses in there and a receptionist who would greet people, check them in, and we started to even have signage that we placed in there saying that, no bullying and harassment would be tolerated here, because we even started to get that coming through to our own workspaces and things like that. So yeah, it was quite shocking, but very eye-opening to see that as well, and people's visceral reactions to the pandemic, and obviously had nothing to do with us or our hardworking team, but was just really, we saw that as a reflection of really the decline in everybody's mental health, taking it out on other people and reacting in this way as well. So that was a difficult time.
Was that the switching or the pivotal moment for you to switch Set Protect into a mental health resource, or was it a different situation?
Well, it was all of these things combined, right? It was having, delivering the news of positive COVID tests to people that were having panic attacks. It was seeing people's visceral reaction to what they had to do to be able to go to work, and these bullying and harassment situations that kept on popping up and were getting worse and worse. And then, I come from the commercial and non-union film industry here, and we even had then some people from within the industry, within the crews, that were saying, hey, actually, I think we need to do a little bit more than just, this, and maybe we should start to impose a code of conduct, for example, as in part of our sector, because it's not only your people that are feeling it, but it's other people as well. So then we developed a code of conduct, and we then started working with the Commercial Production Association of Western Canada to provide that code of conduct for them. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. Once we started talking to more people, we sent out a survey to see what people really thought about this and if they did want that kind of support. And the results were a resounding yes. So, paired with our own experience, our contractors' experience, these bullying and harassment, all of these different things that kind of joined together as one picture of where is the support? What's available to people, and why doesn't anybody have anything available to them right now?
Could you share with us a couple of initiatives that you and Set Protect have put into place that you have noticed has started to create a positive impact on the industry?
Yeah, so, when we first started doing this, this was something that I started going to film festivals and events and talking about, and just to spread awareness, and start to really educate people on what this looks like in our industry. Because, as you said, this is something that historically we haven't talked about, because we come from an industry that's shut up, do your work, don't say no, yes, go to work, that's it. And so when I started going to these events in this last year, I kept getting the same feedback from people of, oh, this is so great that you're talking about this. This is so great. We need to talk about this more. Yep, yep. And I thought, yeah, why am I the only one that's talking about this though? In all of Canada? Surely I can't be the only one that has these thoughts. And the more I talked about it, the more people kept coming to me and saying, hey, I've had this experience, and this is what's been happening to me. And so I started putting cameras in front of them. And so we created the Being Seen series, which we have a
Which is
couple of
fantastic.
episodes.
I'll put a
Yeah,
link in the description for you guys to check it out. It is a really great series.
yeah, thank you. I'm really proud of it, because it's something that, when we talk about psychological health and safety in the workplace, we're still understanding what that means. But while we're in this time of change where we are developing these protocols, legislation, we're developing systems that we can implement in workplaces, that we should really be listening to the people that it's affecting the most, which is the crews on the bottom line that don't have a voice and that don't have any sort of control or any sort of anything to do with how it's implemented, but it affects them the most. Yeah, so this is the Being Seen series, is we put cameras in front of people, so that they could share their experience of what their experience has been in film and TV. Maybe they've been in this industry for 15, 20 years and they've never had any sort of support, but maybe they have been dealing with mental health challenges this whole time, and how did they do it and what do they think? And let's hear it from the people that it actually affects, which is the workers every day, the driving force behind our entire industry, which is people, that we have to look after.
Yeah. I have two thoughts on that. One, yes, like our crews just need so much more support. You work 12
Mhm.
to 18-hour days. Sometimes I remember doing like a 20-hour day on set. It's like you do these
Mhm.
really long days. Like you said, you're at the front lines of this industry and they need support. And as I continue to explore how I can make a difference in this industry, I feel so conflicted sometimes in that I really want to give our crew members these resources and tools that have been like transformative for me myself as a producer in
Mhm.
television. But then there's this other side of it that I struggle with, and I want to add on to what I contribute is like there also needs to be change from up top. Like, I don't wanna just
Mhm.
teach people
Absolutely.
to, um, feel good under really horrible circumstances. I want to find out how we can change those circumstances, and I feel like as much as we need to learn these grounding, coping, healthy mental health skills, we also need to demand change in this industry. And I think that is
Mhm.
a really hard, scary topic. And as
Mhm.
on the topic of, being one of the only voices, of having these conversations and people coming up to you in secret and being like, thank you for saying that. Oh my God, I feel the same way. I don't feel like I can say it out loud. Even for myself, when I have these conversations, when I'm posting my experiences on social media, I'm terrified most of the time that the industry that I work and rely on right now, like being a TV producer, is what I need to do still to pay my bills, that someone
Mhm.
is going to see these conversations and see me trying to make this change and not want to hire me anymore because they're worried that I'm
Mm.
going to be a problem, that I'm going to push
Mhm.
back, that I'm going to be, you know, difficult to control under these. And I'm not trying to, I'm trying to be a solution. I want to be a solution. I want to be a positive resource. I want to lean into these
Yeah.
problems and figure out how
Yeah.
we can do better moving forward. But it is scary to talk about these
Mhm.
things publicly.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a huge part of this culture that is the film industry,
Mhm.
you're definitely not alone in these feelings that you have. And,
Absolutely.
this is why the whole Me Too movement exists,
And
like,
intimacy coordinators were invented.
exactly, exactly. So we are seeing change from the Me Too movement that's happened, from intimacy coordinators. We are moving in the right direction, I would say. But I would still say that there is a lot of fear around it because we do work in a gig-based industry. And yeah, you don't want to make a name for yourself, but I think that this is the point of what we're doing now
Mhm.
is, let's move away from this language of shame and this whole, well, this is what the industry is like. And it's like, no, no, no. We love the industry. We're
Yes.
part of it. We want to be part of it, but this is the whole point is we want to be able to do it in a way that's sustainable and in a way that retains people so that they're not getting burnt out and they have to leave the industry. We're
Yes.
not doing it out of any other reason. We don't want to be a squeaky wheel. We just want some change so that we can remain doing what we love doing.
It really does help the bottom line at the end of the day. And I believe that this is an investment that, if taken seriously now, that will make a really, truly beautiful impact on the longevity of this industry and the creators who work within it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we know now that, like, especially because mental health is and psychological health and safety in the workplace, it's something that's really only come to light since the pandemic. So there's a lot that we don't know and that we're still learning about. And we're all still learning, about mental health. We're all on this same journey, and we're starting to see now these reports coming through. We're starting to see the science behind what actually happens when workers are happier at work, when they have those psychological safety nets in place and safeguards that can protect them. We're seeing that people are more creative when they're happier and, they're able to work in a way that maintains their well-being.
100%.
We know that the end product is going to be better when you have people that are able to work to their full extent. We are now seeing all of these other reports come through from Deloitte and people like that well, companies like that, I should say, that are pumping out information now on what it actually looks like to implement mental health supports. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to doing nothing costs more than if you do something about it.
Yeah.
So yes, you know, it's new, it's different. People don't like change, but it's here. We need it, and once you start budgeting money towards it, this is when we can start to see the effects of it, and really start to see that on the bottom line over time as well, of retaining top talent in our industry and seeing that people are staying and not leaving, which is what
Yeah.
we're going to see as well with these strikes as well. We're going to see how many people are actually going to return to the industry after this year
Yes.
of intense strikes that people have just endured, as well as the pandemic.
This this is such a hard time in our industry. You see so many
Hmm.
articles right now about how our industry is crumbling, and for those in the States, I'm reading a lot about the work in the States being outsourced to cheaper countries like Canada or England, where they can go further. And I mean, I guess for us in Canada, that's kind of great, more work coming our way, but it's taking a really big mental toll on a lot of people who work in this industry. I'm wondering, um, if you have had any experiences where community has made a positive impact on your mental health within this industry.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, I would say that you could define community a few different ways as well here. First of
True.
all, you could have your community of people, of your family and friends that are your most trusted people, and that are always your supports. You could have your work community, which is totally different, to your family and friends, but, you know, um, really important nonetheless to have that community as well. And I think that comes back to wrap parties as well and celebrating
Yeah.
that community within that. Um, so I would say that, within this industry, because mental health supports are still developing and we're still seeing this come to light, I'd actually like to give an example of supports that I've received outside of the film industry before I joined it,
Nice.
in
Please.
2015, I will say this. Yes, 2015, that's right. Um, so before I joined film, I worked seasonally in fishing lodges here in BC. So remote work, very remote, living out on the ocean for entire summers and just working on a barge, supporting a fishing lodge that intakes anywhere between 40 to 60 people every 3 to 4 days, and that all of the guests come in and they go out fishing on the water, they go sport fishing, they catch salmon, halibut, all of the above, and drink and eat, and then they fly back to where they came from. And so I did that for 2 summers before I stepped into film. And one of those summers, actually, there was a situation where one of the guests unfortunately passed away while they were on the barge, like at the lodge with us. And I was the first one on the scene and was there to deal with this. And in such a remote location at 11 p.m. at night, it was really difficult getting any sort of help out at that time. Helicopters couldn't fly to us, and we had to wait hours for the Coast Guard to come find us in the middle of the ocean. So, you know, very traumatizing for everyone involved, myself included. Um, but what I learned from this experience was that because my employer at the time, they were all over it. A crisis has happened. Everyone that was involved with that had been affected, and
Mhm.
they flew a counselor up the next day. So the police arrived the next day, and a counselor arrived. And, at that time of my life as well, I was in my mid 20s. I'd seen a counselor before, but, didn't really understand, why I would maybe go talk to this person. But, they were just around. They came and introduced themselves to all of us and said, look, I'll just be over here. If you want to chat to me, no pressure, but I'll be over here. And then as the days went on, it was kind of like, your trauma of what we had all just experienced in this crisis situation started to come out in weird ways. And, it was those moments that we were able to go and talk to that counselor immediately and work through that trauma. And I was offered by my employer at the time to come back to Vancouver if I wanted to be flown out and not stay there. But I actually chose to stay for the rest of the season because I had the support of my employer by providing that mental health support that helped me work through everything that I was feeling at the time. And if I had chosen to leave and gone back to my apartment in the city, I would be away from my community that had also experienced that trauma and would have had to have dealt with it in isolation. And what we know about mental health is that healing occurs when you're part of a community and not on your own in isolation. So I chose to stay, and I was able to work through all of my trauma with the help of a mental health professional that was provided by the employer and with the support of my community. And so even now, and then after that, I went back for a second summer the next year. because I
Wow.
loved it so much.
What
And
a what a testament to the leadership and the care that they provided, that even after such a
mhm,
traumatic event, that still felt like a safe space for you because they knew how to care for you at that time, and it allowed you to heal and
mhm,
continue working and showing up and being the amazing employee I'm sure you were.
absolutely. And that was it, right? I didn't carry that trauma with me as well because I was able to deal with it at the time. And, even years later, I recently had a conversation with my mum about this, and she said to me, I'm so glad that they were able to provide that to you because that could have changed the entire trajectory of your life. I could have taken that and held that with me ongoing if I hadn't had the tools to work through it at the time. And so I'm forever grateful to that employer for providing that support, and really ahead of their time, honestly, in 2015,
Mhm.
which is 9 years ago now.
Totally.
But I take that as part of my experience in this field of, obviously this was a crisis situation, so
Mhm.
and a real tragedy. But what we can learn from that as well is not only can we provide these supports in a crisis situation, but now, in light of everything that we've talked about in this podcast so far, of what we experience in this industry, it can also be preventative as well as a reaction to a crisis.
Mm.
So,
I'm
yeah.
really glad that that counselor was just accessible for you to talk. Like they were just there,
Hmm.
ready to talk. I
Yeah.
have myself experienced a trauma at work, and they brought in a counselor, but it was uh, during working hours while people were on set working with no private space to have a conversation.
Mm. Hmm.
And the call was not an opportunity to process feelings, but it was a presentation on what is trauma. And I just,
Hmm.
with everything I just knew that production was trying to do the right things and made a good move, but it didn't land in the way that it was useful, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I remember jumping
Yeah.
on this call just out of pure curiosity, why I'm doing this to create those changes. And so I jumped on, and I was a part of that traumatic experience, wanting an opportunity to discuss with my colleagues what had happened, to process it with everyone, and then to
Hmm.
just sit and listen to a presentation on what is trauma. I was like, I was I don't even know how to put the words of like how I felt in that moment of just like trapped, to be honest.
Hmm. Mm. That's
So
interesting.
I am curious because I hear how amazing you felt cared for in that industry, in that
Hmm.
workplace environment. What do you think are some steps that productions in this industry can be doing to make meaningful steps towards mental health support for their crew members?
Mm. That's a great question because it's with a complex answer. I mean, I think that if we start at the very bottom, at the very easiest things that we can do, we were talking about culture change earlier, and I think that that's something that is the easiest thing to do in this scenario. So things like, even discussing with your crew that maybe you're going to be shooting triggering or sensitive content, giving people a warning, a content warning before the day, giving people the option to be replaced if that's something that they can't bear witness to, even if it's fictional, non-fictional. You have no idea what people's experiences are that they bring to the workplace, and for so long we've adopted this, check your baggage at the door and you're at work now, so don't bring that. But I think that we've got to a point now where it's not possible for people to do that. We've been through too much. There's too much going on, and I think we need to acknowledge that and just really consider people in this. So even, you could talk about it in your safety meeting. at the beginning of the day. You could talk about resources. You could put it on your call sheet. You could put it in the call sheet email. You could, even things like just talking about it, and even, that in itself provides a safe space for people, breaks down stigma and all of those things that we talk about. And as much as I would love to say in 2024 that stigma doesn't exist, it absolutely does.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to go away unless we do talk about it in a meaningful way. So that's the first thing I would say, is that, changing the culture really small. And I think that that's something that we need to talk about as well, is that it doesn't need to be a grand gesture. It can be these little things, like anything in mental health, in physical health. You could just do little things, that can make a huge difference. So I will say that that's one way to do it,
Mhm.
as well as part of this culture change. Scheduling shorter hours on set, I think, is also a huge one.
Say it louder.
Um,
Say it louder.
for the people in the back, yeah, which is a huge one. And
It's a
part of.
huge one. I was just on a show that had 18-hour days, and on paper it would
Mhm,
be 12 hours, but then it would just
mhm,
keep going. And I sometimes I just felt so trapped. Like, I can't leave.
mhm,
I'm on a day rate. They've booked me and paid me for the day. Uh, you don't have a voice to leave. You can't just be like, sorry, I'm out. Like, that does not work in our industry. You are literally at the
mhm,
mercy of these top tier producers to make their day. Like, we designed this system. We can
mhm.
redesign this system.
Oh, absolutely, we can. We can choose to create a different work environment if we want it. And every bid, every budget, you can create a workplace that works for you. Like,
Mhm.
we've seen it happen before. I'm not sure if you've read or heard about any of the work that Sarah Polly is doing with this.
Oh, I need to look it up.
When she filmed Women Talking and she was directing, she made sure that people were not overworked, that there was childcare for people, that there
Oh,
was, all of these wonderful things that she's implementing now, because she was a child actor and has been subject to, lots of different situations in her entire career. But, we see that it is possible to create the type of workplace that you want to be part of and works for you, but
yes.
you have to create it. And I will say that you should watch the second episode of Being Seen as well, with Jen Pogue, who produced her own TV show County Blooms, and they did 4 hour days. They
Wait,
only
wait,
did
wait.
4 hours.
4-hour days. How? What? I'm
Yeah,
my
which
brain
is,
isn't like it's not clicking.
I know, which is a little bit outrageous, coming from our industry, but it was all that she could do at the time with
Ah,
her health circumstances that she was dealing with at the time. She was the producer, so she got to call the shots, and she could only work 4 hours a day. That's what they budgeted for. And
wow.
they created this entire series. And she actually talks about how some of the crew were a little bit like, should we do more? Are you sure it's
Mm.
only been 4 hours? They were a bit weird about it. But actually, now they've gone to be nominated for the Canadian Screen Awards, for this show that was created with 4 hour working days. So it just goes to show that, you don't have to slog it out with these huge
Mhm.
days and these huge, it really doesn't have to be like that. It really can work for what you need and what your crew can do.
100%. I worked on a show that had 4-day weeks. So we were doing like 12, 13-hour days, but only 4 days a week. And even just having that additional day to, one day is usually for rest. Then you can actually, do your laundry, do your grocery, and then you actually had time to like see friends and family. And then I remember feeling just ready to return to it. And I had
Hmm.
as I had gotten the rest, I was mentally, physically, emotionally ready to handle what was coming my way at work. But then I
Hmm.
just wrapped a show that was 18-hour days back to back to back. And they were always going over call sheets. And I remember looking around the crew like day 5 during our safety meeting, and everyone just looked dead. People looked exhausted. People looked
Yeah.
so miserable, so sad. And you just like, when you're running on fumes, how could you possibly do the best work? Again, it's a
Hmm.
worthy investment for these
Oh,
companies to be making in their crews.
yeah, absolutely. And, we also talked about creativity being inhibited before, but
Yes.
if you're running on fumes and like, let's talk about the increase of workplace incidents as well,
Oh,
then, you know,
yes.
del delayed schedules. What's the cost of delaying a production by an hour or two every day because you've got a workplace incident that just happened, or you've got someone that had a mental health complication at some point, and it all kind of it all ties into each other. It really does.
Through all your work that you have been doing, when any kind of meaningful change is trying to be created, we often see a lot of resistance as being a part of advocating for change. Can you share any moments of resistance that you have experienced and overcome?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because at this time, while this is still a very new field that's emerging in Canada and in
Mhm.
our workplaces, I would say that, you know, there's lots of different things going on right now. There's a lot of fear around this change, but there's also, not a lot of knowledge about it. So, in this role comes a lot of educating and awareness as well. But, one thing that I'll say is the challenge right now that we're seeing is money not being allocated to this. So, I mentioned that, we we can do small things like, everything I just mentioned about what we can do to contribute to culture change. But really, if we want to be implementing any sort of solutions here that are meaningful, we need to be applying and allocating money to it in our budgets. So that's a huge problem right now is convincing people that it's a good idea to invest money into this
Yes.
with your people. But to them, I will say that, we're already seeing that it's successful in the UK and in Australia. The UK is miles ahead of Canada in this and actually have one particular organization has created a completely new crew position called Wellbeing Facilitator. And they are a permanent crew member that is hired on productions to be that wellbeing facilitator that is there every day. So much like my experience of what I had at the fishing lodge, where they provided a counselor where you could just go chat to them at any time of day. That's what they've created there. So that's actually what we've created within Set Protect as well. We now have a team all over Canada of mental health professionals, whether they're coaches or counselors, or we have a psychotherapist. We have a whole range of different people now that we can put on set that can be that person that hopefully will absolutely will have a private room where you can go to. But this is one of the most effective ways to provide that support to people is actually providing a mental health professional. Much like we have all of these physical health precautions in place. We have first aid for physical injuries. We have stunts crews that come in for to protect people physically. We have, you know,
Intimacy
protocols on
coordinators now to protect us from unwanted sexual intimacy.
exactly. We also have things like slips and trips and falls and keep your gear out of the fire lanes and all of these physical health precautions that are in place. But we don't, and that we put a lot of money into as well because we don't want to see insurances go up with workplace incidents and things like that. But we really need to be thinking of mental health as the same as physical health. We really need to be incorporating that as the full package of keeping people safe at work. So, you know, coming back to the resistance of putting money towards it is, you know, yeah, we are still seeing that as a huge problem, but one that we hope will start to change soon because we've now seen a few different organizations and productions implement that here in Canada. And so I think that it's only a matter of time before it does really start to be implemented in a meaningful way.
I had no idea that the UK had created a position called a well-being facilitator. I'm going to have to
Hmm.
find one of them and interview them on this podcast because that is so fascinating. I'm immediately like, I want that job.
Yeah, I can introduce you to one of them if you'd like. In
I
fact,
would love that.
the creator of the position, Leo Anna Thomas, actually, they created that position and worked for an organization called 6 Feet from the Spotlight, which still exists. They're not part of it anymore, but they're still continuing on that work. And that's just one example of what the UK is doing right now. You know, there is a Set Protect type company that exists there as well that offers counselors on set and offers those one-on-one counseling sessions and debriefs and workshops, which is everything that we offer now too, because of demand in other countries and personal experience, and the way that the industry is going is exactly what we offer for people now, which can be for, you know, whatever you, if you have different budget levels, if you have different needs, you know, we can accommodate all of those things and help us help you by tell us what you need. Let us create that for you in this time when everything is being created at the same time, you know? So,
What
yeah.
what changes do you hope to see in this industry in regards to mental health? In your dream world, when you think about the changes you want to see, what does that look like?
hmm I would really love for mental health to be recognized the same as physical health. And I think that's a lot of the goals for all of us that are doing this kind of work out there, is for there to be no shame around it, for it to not be taboo or not be a huge song and dance about, you know, what are we going to do about mental health, and oh, it's scary, we can't talk about it. It's like, no, it's just it's one of the same in physical health. You can't have good physical health and good mental health, and it's all the same, you know? And I think that we just need to recognize that, so
The
that,
whole human. Recognize the whole human.
yeah, because we are human at the end of the day, you know? And actually, my brother recently made a great comparison about, you know, we are all human, we're not machines. But if you are in a workplace that deals with machinery, which he is, he's a geologist, so he deals with big machinery all of the time. And he said to me, well, hey, look, when I am running my business, I put money into the maintenance and the servicing of my machinery because I can see when it's about to break down. I can see the warning lights. I can see the battery go down and it turns off. And I can see that then I need to put money into that to keep my business moving forward. But with humans, we don't have warning signs. We don't have an empty battery that you can see.
I would argue we do sometimes. You can see, like, there
Sometimes.
are signs. If we learn, if we start educating people, we can start seeing the deterioration of someone's mental health. We can see that they're staring off blankly. We can see a shift in their energy. We can see that their eyes are red. Maybe they're like, if we become aware that this is something, then maybe we can see those flashing lights. Sorry, continue.
Mhm. Absolutely, I agree with you. But not everybody can recognize those signs because they don't know. Unless you've taken a mental health first aid course, unless you've been subject to mental health challenges of your own in the past, or had a friend or a family member where you can recognize those signs, most of the time it goes undetected. And so, but this is the whole argument for having someone that's on set that can recognize that can go and service someone or energize them, or, you know, reboot their system, or whatever that looks
Yes.
like in a human, because you can't necessarily see it the way that you would see a camera battery that's about to die, or, you know, whatever else. So, and really, a lot of the talks that are going on right now with psychological health and safety protocol development is, should it be on the employees to recognize when someone is not at their best? Whose responsibility is that? And I'd
And
like to hear your thoughts on that, because that's a huge topic of conversation right now.
I think I mean, my first instinct is that it's the head of the department. It comes down to our leaders. I personally would love for the mental health first aid certificate to be mandatory for anyone who is the head of any department in film and
Hmm.
television.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And it comes back to what we were saying before as well, that it has to be implemented from the top. It shouldn't it shouldn't ever be the employee's job. If you can recognize that someone's not okay, then that's great too. Absolutely. but it absolutely needs to come from the top and from these heads of departments.
It
So
does.
then, so then we come into discussions about, well, should we provide training to them, or should we provide someone on set that it's their job? Because also head of departments have their own job that they're doing as well. So is it fair to add extra onto the people that are already dealing with so much?
I mean, everyone in any department needs a mental health resource. I don't know. Again, like I have so many questions. I don't have all the answers yet, but these
Mm-hmm.
conversations and having these discussions and thinking through all of these minute aspects rather than waiting for the crisis to happen and then being like, oh, what the frig do we do now? It should be a
Mm-hmm.
thing that we have structures, information around how to manage it at all times. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
Absolutely.
glad that we're having these discussions.
Another industry that has these things in place, which is the sporting industry. We see that the sporting industry has psychologists for professional athletes. And, you know, I don't know if you've seen Ted Lasso, which
I
I
love
love Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
Okay, so let's talk about the psychologist that they get for their people. And we look at Ted Lasso, who's the most wonderful character, who, you know, can't not love that guy.
Yes.
But he's so resistant to, he doesn't understand why you would need that kind of support. And it's interesting to watch his transformation in the second season of this psychologist, this mental health professional who's there. You can just go to her office anytime you want to get that support, and you see his transformation in that as well. And
Mm.
this is an industry, this, you know, the sporting industry that, you know, it's completely normal to have this kind of thing. And if we look at the parallels between that kind of industry and the film and television industry that we work in, are we not professional athletes in our own right? It's marathons that we run when we're on these productions for 6, 8, 10 months, whatever. I would consider that a marathon. So not only do you need to be physically there and in shape and ready for whatever comes at you, but you also need to be mentally in the game. And that's something that we're not providing to our people currently.
That is a fantastic comparison. I love comparing mental health resources to the physical resources because they're just so widely more acceptable. It's like we
Mm-hmm.
fear this this part of ourselves. It's almost scary because you can't see it because it's not tangible. We can see
Mm-hmm.
our physicality. We can tell if something's injured or broken. And when we're struggling mentally, the spiral we can go into of feeling like it's us, like it's our identity. It's us as a human that is wrong or bad or broken. And we just need all the support we can get. What message do you have for anyone who is listening, who is a creative in the film, TV, or theater community who is currently struggling with their mental health?
The first thing I would say is that you're not alone in how you're feeling
Mhm.
at all. And there are so many people out there. And I get people messaging me every week now, telling me their stories, telling me how they want to get involved. You know, there are so many people out there that have been feeling this for maybe their whole careers that now are finally feeling that it's okay to talk about this. And it absolutely is. So please know, number one, that you're not alone. And number two, it's absolutely okay to talk about it with your friends, with your colleagues, you know. And the other thing I will say is get curious, you know, educate yourself on what that looks like. Try different things as well, because, you know, we talk a lot about mental health professionals being, you know, a great way to support people in the workplace. But I also will say, and just, you know, in general as well, but I will say that, you know, talk therapy or, you know, isn't for everyone.
Mhm.
So if you're out there, if you're listening to this, and you've had a bad experience with a therapist or a coach, or they didn't quite fit, you know, don't take that as the be all and end all. You know, finding a mental health professional, number one, talking to someone is not for everyone. And there are so many other things out there that you can do.
Mhm.
The second thing I'll say about that is if you have had a bad experience with someone, please don't write off every other mental health professional that exists out there, because finding somebody that is right for you is kind of like dating or interviewing, someone. It's like you have to find someone that you feel safe with, that you can connect with, that you can be your authentic self with, that you can actually work through some things with, So keep trying, don't give up if you've had a bad experience. But, coming back to the first point of, if talk therapy isn't for you and you've tried a bunch of different mental health professionals, maybe you need something like meditation. Maybe you need something like a training group where you go and you have a community where you go and work out with, because physical exercise is also going to help your mental state as well. It all feeds into everything. Maybe I'm sure you've got other ideas too, Jess, of like what people
Journaling.
can do when, yes, journaling, a huge one, which
Journaling is a
really,
great tool. If you can't say it out loud to someone, it's a way for you to say it to
mhm,
yourself and it to be as cathartic and help you process it. Journaling. If you can't say it to anyone, say it to yourself. Put it in words, write it down, type it in
yes,
your phone, put it in your computer, write it on a napkin. I don't care. Just write it.
mhm.
It is better out than in.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And journaling personally for me has got me through a lot of really tough times where, where you have no idea, you're feeling so many things that you have no idea really what the root cause is of what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And just getting it all out on a piece of paper of maybe somebody that's not going to judge you, that you can do in private, that nobody's ever going to see,
Yeah.
get it all out there, get it out that way,
Yeah.
but it
Burn
has
it
to come.
afterwards for like burn it afterwards if you
Mhm.
want to.
Do what you
Like
got to do. Yeah,
um
absolutely.
Alice, if anyone listening wants to learn more about you or Seprotect and the resources you provide, where can they find you?
So visit our website at setprotect.ca. That's the best place. But if you want to talk about anything or anything mental health related, even if you just want to reach out and say hi and tell me your story, I am always here to hear that as well. So you can email me at hello@setprotect.ca. I'm on that email all the time. So please reach out. And also, I will say, reach out if you're thinking about implementing any of these things on your production, and if the options that we have, maybe don't fit within your budget, let's talk about it. Let's make it work for you, because we want to make sure that people are, adequately supported in whatever way that looks. If you don't want someone on set, maybe it's someone on call. We can do that as well. So please just reach out and let's have a chat about it, because we'd love
Thank
to hear
you
from you.
so much, Alice. This has been,
Yeah.
I've learned so much from your experience and from your work. And I think our conversation today is a step in the right direction. We might not have all
Mhm.
of the answers currently, but we are making changes and making steps. And I'm just really grateful for you taking the time to talk to me today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for the work that you do as well, Jess, because, you're out here doing this work as well, talking to creatives, and it's so important that the support exists. So
Oh,
thanks for the
thank
work that you're
you.
doing too.
Now time for the legal stuff. This podcast is presented to you solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I may be a professionally certified coach myself, but hosting a podcast is not coaching. This podcast should not be used in substitution of working with a licensed therapist, doctor, coach, or other qualified professionals. Copy that? Amazing. See you on the next episode. Nothing but love, Jess.